a service company of sorts, and a restaurant chain. Among the hidden gems we're going to hear more about now with Tracey Ryniec, our equity strategist here at Zacks. You actually are the value equity strategist, but these hidden gems don't always fall into that category.
No, they're not always values.
Okay, so we're looking at hidden gems across the board,
That's right.
So Argan Inc. Is actually a company, it's a holding company that has 4 companies under it,
yes,
providing services of varying sorts to the power industry.
Right, and that's why these companies are kind of difficult to understand, because you just have the name and then you don't really know what they do. But it is good to think about them as, you know, this entity that provides all these different services, as you said, to the power side.
Okay.
They also do telecom through like Maryland Cable, I think they own.
Okay.
So all these are kind of mixed in, but they build power plants and then they consult on them. They do repairs, all these other things. So all the businesses do tie together, and that area is doing, you know, pretty well right now. They just opened up 4 new power plants, so they saw big gains in the last quarter from that. They're Zacks #1 because those estimates are rising, and they could be a Trump infrastructure play here because of the area that they're in. Obviously, if we're going to be building out more of, you know, the infrastructure type things, no one knows yet what that might mean, and power probably will be involved in that in some way. So, you know, people like these kinds of stocks right now, but this company also has, you know, the fundamentals to back it up before any of that stuff comes in. They had a really big revenue increase this year. You can see it kind of in the estimates. They still have one more quarter to report in their fiscal 2017, I think it is. And then next year, analysts aren't so sure what's going to happen. They say that they're going to have more revenue growth. Their backlog hasn't really expanded, so that makes analysts a little bit pausing. It's a little bit over $1 billion for the backlog, but they only have $1 billion market cap, so that kind of tells you where they are. But then they also pay these kind of special dividends out, too, to shareholders. So it's not a consistent every quarter. It depends on what they do. But last quarter, they paid $1 a share, which is quite enormous. They have a lot of cash on hand. They don't have hardly any debt, if any. And so, you know, they have this good plan in place, and not many people know about them. Only 2 analysts cover them. That's why they're kind of hidden. And although since the election, you can see from this chart I put up for the 2-year chart, wasn't doing all that much, and then bam, you know, everything that's even tied anything close to infrastructure has been taking off. They're trading around 17 times, so they're not super cheap here. If you get more of a pullback, I would like it a little bit more. But this is kind of an interesting play that not many people are aware of. So.
But you wrote also that earnings are expected to fall going forward. So is that concerning?
I usually don't like to see that as much, but as I said, I feel like the analysts are being a little conservative until they get this next earnings report for the 4th quarter, and then they can kind of see more from the company how the next year is playing out. So not as concerned.
All right, well, fair enough. The other company is Bob Evans down on the farm.
Yeah.
Restaurant chain with, 522 restaurants operating?
More than you might think.
Yeah.
We're familiar with Bob Evans here in the Midwest because we do have them here.
Yes.
I didn't realize they're only in 18 states, so I guess they have more areas they could conquer. But, you know, they serve the breakfast foods and all of that, but they also have this very interesting side business, which is their Bob Evans Food, actual BEF Foods
that they sell
division.
in grocery stores?
Yeah, and you and I mean, I've seen that here in the Midwest too, where, you know, you get those side dishes, like, not that I don't want to cook for myself, but if I can buy the macaroni and cheese side thing or whatever it is, like I sometimes do. And then they have the sausages, of course, the breakfast sausages in the frozen food section as well.
Right.
This area is, you know, big, like, that area has been doing real well for them. Last quarter, the profits rose 6%. The side dishes were up like 13% or something.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and the sausages were up 7%. So apparently everybody else is like me and they don't want to cook. But, you know, that side of the business is doing pretty well. The restaurant side has been struggling for a while. I feel like they kind of lost their brand or like who they were. I mean, we all kind of know Bob Evans, but...
Yeah, but you don't see much advertising anymore.
No.
At one point, they were saturating with advertising.
And so they've kind of been in a turnaround mode. They've cut costs, so they've got the costs under control now, and then they launched a new menu last September. It's only been in there a couple months, so it's a little early to see. They say the new menu is working. You know, people want to eat healthier and all that, so they're adding these kinds of items to even the breakfast menus. And so same-store sales were still down the last quarter, but they had same-store sales down well, they had them up in only one of their states in the prior quarter, and then last quarter in 6 out of the 18 states where they operate, they had positive numbers. So it's going in the right direction. We'll kind of see what happens. And the restaurants, I kind of didn't believe it when they were all saying this, but they were complaining that no one was eating out because of the election, like prior to that, like through October. Nobody wanted to spend money. They weren't doing anything. And I was like, oh, you don't know.
That doesn't make much sense.
You wouldn't think so, but...
Because other restaurants were full.
Well, no, they were all complaining too. Everybody was complaining in general.
I didn't see evidence of that when I went out.
They were saying that they were seeing it in their numbers, and that's why same-store sales weren't that good in like September, October.
Okay.
But then a couple restaurants we've heard from have said, like, as soon as the election was over, everybody like went out to go eat again.
Wow.
So apparently that happened. Their last quarter was through the end of October, so before the election. So it'll be interesting to see if those numbers improve. Like some of the other restaurants are seeing going forward. And then a lot in this quarter depends on the weather, and you know, if you get huge blizzards somewhere, nobody can eat out, that kind of stuff. So far it's been pretty good actually, so they shouldn't be complaining about the weather so far this quarter. So we'll have to see on the restaurant side, but they have said that they hired JP Morgan to look at you know, opportunities for them. Value creation is what they called it. So that could mean spinning off possibly the food, selling it to someone. Yeah, because they do have that great food business on top of the restaurant business.
Sure.
So that's something to watch. You can see the estimates here. They've actually raised this year's estimates 2 quarters in a row because they've been doing much better than what the analysts expected. We haven't seen much of that going on where they've been that aggressive. So you can see the estimates rising for this year and some for next year, about 12% earnings growth. You have for both these years. That's pretty good for a restaurant chain, but they've got that food side, so they're kind of this hybrid. That's why I like them. Only 4 analysts are covering them, so I do feel like they're kind of hidden. And if you're not in a state that has them, you're like, who's Bob Evans? You don't really know, or you're not paying attention to the supermarkets or whatever. Like, you just aren't as familiar. But you can see this chart. It's all over the place. They keep having to do turnarounds, and then that doesn't work, and then the shares sell off. And now people are hopeful again. They're not cheap here. They're trading at 23 times. But if you get another sell-off here, I'd be even more interested. But I do like the story. I do like the opportunities they have there with the 2 different types of businesses, what they might do, you know, possibly spinning one off or selling one. And the new menu gives me hope, too.
Pays a small dividend.
It does, a little over 2%. That's not so bad. So yeah, you are getting something for your patients while you're waiting for it to turn around too.
All right, do you own either of these?
I do not.
All right, you can always check out more stock information, don't forget, on our website, Zacks.com. If you haven't already, get on over, and it begins on the home page, and you can link to a lot of other information from there. With Tracey, I'm Terry Ruffalo.